Beneath the stone floors of Egypt's ancient temples lie secrets that could tear our history books to pieces. The story we know, a simple rise from primitive beginnings to modern empires, is being challenged by discoveries so profound they hint at a forgotten chapter of human existence. In the shadows of the pyramids and within the depths of sacred halls, evidence points to a timeline far older and more mysterious than we ever dared to believe. By the end of our journey, you will see a completely new picture of human origins, one pieced together from artifacts and ruins that defy conventional explanation. How could a statue show signs of rainfall from a time when Egypt was a barren desert? What purpose could a perfectly machined stone disk serve in a world of copper tools? The answers suggest a lost civilization with knowledge that rivals our own. What does it mean for our future if our past is so much deeper than we thought? The first light of dawn touches the limestone casing of the Great Pyramid, a moment of silence that has repeated for millennia. This is the Giza Plateau, a place so familiar in pictures yet so deeply misunderstood. We see these structures as monuments, as tombs, but to the civilization that built them, they were something far greater. They were sacred ground, conceived as portals to the gods and the very sites where creation began. This belief is the key to unlocking their deepest secrets. Why would a society pour centuries of labor and unimaginable ingenuity into the Temple of Karnak or the mysterious underground structure known as the Osireion at Abydos? It was because they considered these locations to be nexuses of cosmic power, the only places worthy of safeguarding truths about humanity's true origins. Mainstream Egyptology, championed by figures like Dr. Zahi Hawass, presents a timeline built on pharaohs and dynasties. Yet alternative researchers like Graham Hancock propose a much older narrative, suggesting these sites are the legacy of a lost civilization, a forgotten chapter in human history. This fundamental debate begins with the stones themselves. The sheer scale of the blocks, their impossible precision, and their perfect alignment to the stars are not just feats of engineering. They are the first and most obvious clue. The megalithic core of the Great Pyramid, hidden beneath its smooth outer layer, speaks of a construction technique and a level of knowledge that seems to eclipse even the Bronze Age. These temples were not just built upon the land, they were woven into the very fabric of the cosmos according to their builders' understanding. Before we can even think about what is buried beneath them, we must first listen to what these ancient sentinels have been silently telling us all along. Their existence is the foundation of the mystery. The Great Sphinx stands as a silent witness, its limestone body etched with deep, vertical grooves that tell a story mainstream archaeology refuses to hear. For centuries, these marks were attributed to wind and sand, the relentless forces of the desert. But a geologist saw something different. Dr. Robert Schoch examined the Sphinx not as an archaeologist, but as a scientist reading the rock itself. He identified the erosion patterns as classic evidence of water, specifically heavy and prolonged rainfall. This kind of weathering requires a climate that Egypt has not experienced for thousands of years. The last period of significant, sustained rain in the region was the Neolithic subpluvial, which ended around 7,000 years ago. This single observation creates a devastating crack in the established timeline. If the Sphinx was carved before this rainy period ended, its construction must be pushed back thousands of years before the reign of the pharaoh Khafre, to whom it is traditionally attributed. Dr. Schoch stated that the geological evidence is clear and compelling, pointing to a date far older than dynastic Egypt. mainstream Egyptology counters that wind can indeed create similar features over time, and that there is no archaeological evidence for a sophisticated culture existing in Egypt at that remote date. Yet the geological argument remains, a stubborn fact written in stone. The science of hydraulics explains why water creates these distinct vertical channels as runoff cascades over a surface, dissolving the softer layers of rock. This is not the pitting and scouring of sandstorms, but the sculpting work of torrential downpours. So we are left with a profound contradiction. The Sphinx, the iconic guardian of the Giza plateau, may be a relic from a time before history as we know it began. Its weathered body is a potential timestamp from a forgotten golden age, a civilization capable of such monumental work that its very existence rewrites our past. If the Sphinx is truly that ancient, then our entire understanding of Egyptian civilization is built on a foundation of sand. What other monument standing in plain sight holds a secret just as deep? Descend now into the cool, still air of the Osireion at Abydos, and you step into a different world entirely. This is not the elegant, inscribed grandeur of the temple above. You stand in a sunken, water-logged hall of monstrous stone blocks, a brutalist architecture that feels both ancient and alien. The sheer scale of the red granite megaliths, some weighing over 100 tons, is staggering. They are rough-hewn, Cyclopean giants fitted together with a raw, powerful precision that ignores the refined artistry of later pharaohs. It is a construction style that speaks of a different hand, a different time, and a different purpose. The famed archaeologist Flinders Petrie, who first properly excavated the site, was deeply perplexed by it. He noted its stark contrast to the Temple of Seti I that stands nearby, recognizing it as a profound architectural anomaly. The Osireion does not boast of kings or gods with hieroglyphs. Its walls are silent, its message carved only in the immense weight and placement of its stones. This is not merely an older style, it is a different school of thought entirely, one focused on permanence and raw strength over decorative proclamation. The engineering itself tells a story that defies the conventional timeline. Why build this massive structure so far below the surrounding ground level, ensuring it would be perpetually flooded by groundwater? Some researchers propose this was a deliberate design, an attempt to mimic the primordial waters of creation or perhaps to withstand catastrophic floods. The structure's resemblance to other enigmatic sites across the globe, like the mind-bending stonework of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, is impossible to ignore. It suggests a shared, forgotten language of megalithic construction that predates our accepted history. This secret buried at Abydos challenges the very idea of linear progress. How could the dynastic Egyptians, with their sophisticated but smaller stonework, be the heirs to such a colossal, superior building technique? The evidence in the stone implies a reversal, a devolution of knowledge. The Osireion stands as a silent sentinel from a pre-pharaonic epoch, a time of master builders whose identity has been erased by the sands. If they were not the pharaohs we know, then who were these first architects of eternity, and what cosmic truth were they trying to anchor into the earth? The answer to that mystery may not be found in the sand, but written in the stars themselves. Deep within the crypts of the Hathor temple at Dendera, the walls tell a story that defies simple explanation. Carved in stone are massive, tear-shaped objects, each containing a snake-like form writhing along its center. These strange forms are connected by cables to a box, which is held steady by a priest, while a second figure seems to operate the entire apparatus. To the modern eye, the resemblance is uncanny. It looks for all the world like a colossal ancient light bulb. This is the third great secret, one that challenges our perception of ancient knowledge not through geology or architecture, but through the potential mastery of energy itself. The orthodox interpretation from Egyptology is clear and symbolic. They are not light bulbs, but complex religious symbols. The object is the womb of the goddess. The snake is a serpent deity representing the life force, and the entire scene depicts the moment of creation, the genesis of life from the sacred lotus flower. The jed pillar, the box at the base, symbolizes stability and the backbone of the god Osiris. It is a spiritual diagram, not a technical one. Yet, the alternative theory, championed by figures like Erich von Däniken, sees something profoundly literal. They argue the carvings are a precise depiction of advanced electrical technology. The snake is a filament, the cable is an insulated wire, the box is a power source or a capacitor, and the priest is an operator preventing electric shock. The entire scene is an ancient blueprint. To explore this, we must look beyond Egypt. In the museum in Baghdad rests a small clay jar, dated to the Parthian period over 2,000 years ago. Inside is a copper cylinder and an iron rod, sealed with an asphalt plug. When filled with an acidic electrolyte like vinegar or wine, this so-called Baghdad battery can produce a small electrical charge. While mainstream archaeology suggests it was used for electroplating or religious experience, its existence proves the fundamental principles of electricity were physically present in the ancient world. Could a series of such cells have powered the Dendera devices? Electrical engineers who have analyzed the reliefs point out the logical components. The snake, or filament, is held away from the glass wall by insulators, exactly as in a modern bulb to prevent short-circuiting. The cable is thick and connects to the energy source. Even the stance of the supporting priest who grips the base while another touches the cable could be interpreted as a safety measure against a powerful current. The question then becomes not just what they knew, but how far that knowledge extended. If the ancients truly understood and harnessed such forces, what other scientific principles had they mastered? This line of inquiry does not end with earthly power, but leads us directly to their profound and inexplicable understanding of the cosmos, written in the very stones beneath our feet and the stars in the sky above. Gaze up at the night sky over Giza, where the three pyramids mirror the belt of the constellation Orion with an accuracy that seems to defy coincidence. This is the fourth secret, a celestial code written in stone. The theory, extensively developed by Robert Bovell, posits that the layout of the Giza Plateau is a precise terrestrial map of the stars in Orion's belt. But the mystery goes far deeper than a simple snapshot. The relative brightness of the stars is mirrored by the size of the pyramids, and the course of the Nile River below seems to intentionally reflect the Milky Way in the sky above. This intricate design suggests the builders did more than just glance at the heavens. They understood the slow, grand wobble of the Earth's axis, a 26,000-year cycle known as the precession of the equinoxes. This precessional knowledge is the true key to the mystery. To detect this imperceptibly slow drift of the stars, where constellations shift by just 1 degree every 72 years, requires meticulous generational record-keeping over millennia. It is a feat of long-term observation that mainstream archaeology does not credit to any civilization of that era. Mainstream astronomers often argue the alignments could be coincidental, a product of selective pattern matching where we see what we want to see in a random scatter of monuments. They point out that with so many stars, some correlation is statistically likely, yet the correlation at Giza is too specific, too geometrically perfect to be easily dismissed. The implication is staggering. If the Giza complex was designed as a star map for Orion's belt, then precessional calculations can date its intended epoch. According to this theory, the alignment was perfect not in 2500 BCE, but around 10,500 BCE. This date points directly to the Zep Tepi, the mythical first time of the Egyptians, a golden age when the gods walked the earth. This celestial clock, frozen in limestone and granite, suggests the master planners were not the pharaohs of the fourth dynasty, but the survivors or inheritors of a much older, astronomically advanced culture. Their project was not just to build tombs, but to anchor a specific moment in cosmic time onto the landscape forever. To comprehend the scale of their ambition, we must now look past the stars and examine the tools they used to shape the very earth. The evidence of this lost knowledge is not confined to celestial maps or temple crypts. It is carved directly into the very bones of the earth in the granite quarries of Aswan. Here lies the colossal form of the unfinished obelisk, a single piece of stone that would have towered over 130 feet high and weighed nearly 1,200 tons. Its cracked body, forever trapped in the bedrock, is often presented as a simple tale of failure, a project abandoned, but that perspective misses the true marvel entirely. The real secret is not that it was never finished, but how it was being shaped in the first place. The surfaces surrounding the obelisk are not rough-hewn by brute force. They are marked by incredibly precise, straight channels and a series of deep, perfectly cylindrical drill holes. To the modern engineer, these features are a profound puzzle. How could these marks be made with the simple copper chisels and stone hammers that mainstream history assigns to the ancient Egyptians? Copper is a soft metal, utterly incapable of efficiently cutting granite, one of the hardest stones on the planet. Even our modern masons require diamond-tipped saws and drill bits to work granite with any real precision. The evidence on the ground suggests the Egyptians possessed something far more advanced. Engineers like Christopher Dunn have studied these artifacts with a machinist's eye. He points to the microscopic analysis of cut marks on granite boxes found at Saqqara, which show a feed rate and a consistency that can only be achieved by a tool applying immense, steady pressure, far beyond what a human swinging a mallet could ever produce. The grooves are too straight, the corners too sharp, the surfaces too smooth. Dunn and others have proposed a radical theory that the ancient craftsmen used a form of sonic or ultrasonic machining. Imagine a tool that vibrates at an incredibly high frequency, thousands of cycles per second, pulverizing the stone's crystalline structure with sound waves, allowing it to be carved like soft butter. This would explain the flawless, almost machined surfaces that defy all conventional explanation. Master stonemasons who have attempted to replicate this work using period-accurate tools consistently fail. They cannot achieve the same speed, precision, or depth of cut. One modern artisan was quoted as saying the work is simply impossible with the tools we are told they used. The properties of the stone itself tell the story. Granite and even harder diorite are abrasive, crystalline structures that would shred a copper chisel in minutes. The presence of these perfectly worked stones across Egypt is a silent testament to a technology we have yet to fully comprehend. How did they achieve such perfection? The answer may lie not in their tools, but in the very purpose of the objects they left behind. Artifacts so strange they seem to have fallen out of time itself. This small, unassuming object in a Cairo museum case might be the most disruptive artifact ever unearthed in Egypt. Known as the Schist disc, it was found in the tomb of Prince Sabu, who lived during the First Dynasty, a time when tools were supposed to be simple and crude. Carved from a single piece of brittle schist stone, it is impossibly delicate. Its form is a perfect three-lobed curve, with each lobe flowing seamlessly into a thin central hub. It looks less like a ceremonial plate and more like a component from a modern machine, a propeller or a flywheel designed to spin at high speeds. The craftsmanship is flawless, a symphony of symmetry that should not exist from that era. Schist is a flaky, fragile material that fractures easily under stress. To shape it into this complex, wafer-thin form without shattering it would be a challenge even for today's master craftsmen using diamond-tipped tools. How was this achieved with the primitive copper tools assigned to that time? Materials scientists who have studied the disk are baffled. The fine, consistent grooves and the precise curvature suggest it was worked by a rotary tool, a lathe of some kind, applying even pressure from all sides. Yet mainstream history insists the lathe was not invented for another 2,000 years. This creates an impossible contradiction. The schist disk is a classic example of what researchers call an out-of-place artifact, or an OOP art. These are objects that are found in a stratigraphic or historical context that makes their existence seem technologically impossible. They are the physical anomalies that do not fit the timeline, the stubborn facts that refuse to be swept under the rug. They are not just curiosities, they are evidence. Each one is a tiny crack in the foundation of our accepted history. The disk's purpose remains a complete mystery. It was found in a burial, but it has no known religious or symbolic counterpart in all of Egyptian art. It was not a bowl, not a lamp, not an ornament. Its design is purely functional, aerodynamic even. So what was its function? Was it part of a larger, more complex device that has long since turned to dust? The most compelling theory is that it is a relic of a forgotten technology, a single, surviving piece of a much larger puzzle. It is a fossil of a lost science, hinting at a level of mechanical understanding that we thought was unique to our own modern world. This small stone disk whispers that our past is filled with silent, advanced chapters. To understand why these objects are found where they are, we must investigate the very ground upon which the temples themselves were deliberately built. The Great Pyramid's internal chambers feel nothing like a tomb. Walk through its grand gallery, a soaring, corbelled passage that seems to pull you upward, and you enter the king's chamber. Here the air is still and heavy. The walls are built from massive blocks of red granite, a stone known for its unique crystalline structure. At the chamber's heart sits the so-called sarcophagus, a stark, unadorned coffer carved from a single, solid block of the same granite. But it has no lid, no mummy was ever found inside, and its dimensions are curiously precise. This coffer is not a container for a body. It is the central component of a machine. This is the radical theory proposed by engineer Christopher Dunn, who saw the pyramid not as a silent monument to death, but as a humming, resonant power plant, actively converting the Earth's own vibrations into usable energy. The entire structure, he argues, is a masterpiece of acoustic engineering. The granite used throughout the upper chambers possesses piezoelectric properties. This means that when this specific type of stone is placed under mechanical stress or vibration, it generates an electrical charge. The pyramid, sitting directly on a limestone plateau filled with subterranean cavities and aquifers, acts as a giant resonator. The Earth's constant, low-frequency vibrations would travel up through the bedrock and into the pyramid's core. The Grand Gallery, with its complex, corbelled design, is not just a hallway. It functions as a sound amplifier, a resonant chamber that collects and focuses these vibrations, channeling them toward the king's chamber. Inside that chamber, the vibrating granite walls would begin to pulse with piezoelectricity. The granite coffer, perfectly tuned to a specific harmonic frequency, would act as the main resonator, amplifying the energy further. The narrow shafts, often called air shafts, that lead from the chamber straight to the outside, are precisely aligned to specific stars. But their function, in this theory, is not for the soul of a pharaoh to travel. They are waveguides designed to transmit the concentrated microwave energy produced within the chamber out into the atmosphere or to a receiving station. The physics of resonance and harmonic frequency are key here. Every object has a natural frequency at which it vibrates most easily. If you match that frequency with an external force, the vibrations amplify dramatically, a phenomenon known as sympathetic resonance. The Great Pyramid, according to this view, was perfectly tuned to the Earth's own resonant frequency. It was a geological instrument playing a single, powerful note with the energy of the planet itself. Mainstream Egyptology, of course, rejects this outright. They point to the absence of any electrical components, wires, or direct evidence, and maintain that the pyramid's symbolic and funerary purpose is clear from the surrounding cultural context. They see the coffer as a sarcophagus, the shafts as spiritual passages, and the entire endeavor as an expression of divine kingship. Yet the engineering anomalies persist. Why use such an immense quantity of piezoelectric granite in the upper chambers when simpler limestone would have sufficed for a tomb? Why the precise mathematical and acoustic proportions found throughout the structure's design? If Dunn's hypothesis is correct, even in part, it transforms the pyramid from a static grave into a dynamic piece of ancient high technology. It suggests a civilization that did not just worship the Earth's power, but learned to plug into it directly. What could a society capable of such a feat have been powering with this immense energy? The answer may be encoded in the very layout of their sacred landscape. The towering pillars of the Karnak temple complex rise like a stone forest, a labyrinth of such immense scale it could hold Notre Dame Cathedral 10 times over. But its true secret is not found in any single hieroglyph or statue. It is written in the very arrangement of its courts, its obelisks, and its sacred lake. This entire sprawling complex is a cosmic blueprint, a scale model of the universe as the ancient Egyptians understood it. Researchers like John Anthony West dedicated their lives to decoding this architectural code, revealing that the temple's main axis is not randomly oriented. It aligns with the setting of the midwinter sun, casting long, symbolic shadows that mark the rebirth of the solar god. Even more compelling, the precise placement of its major features, from the massive pylon gates to the positions of its towering obelisks, has been argued to mirror the stars of the constellation Draco, the celestial serpent which coiled around the pole star in the ancient sky. This is the principle of as above, so below made manifest in limestone and granite. The temples were not passive places of prayer. They were active spiritual machines designed to create a harmonic resonance between the earthly and the divine realms. Architects and geometers who have surveyed the site are consistently stunned by the mathematical precision embedded in its design. The proportions of the hypostyle hall, with its 134 colossal columns, follow sacred geometric ratios found in nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. This was not just art, it was a science of alignment. The sacred lake was not merely for ritual purification. Its rectangular form, cut deep into the earth and lined with stone, may have acted as a reflective surface for stargazing, a still pool mirroring the heavens to facilitate the temple's cosmic connection. The entire complex functioned as a single, grand instrument, calibrated to the rhythms of the planet and the cycles of the stars. The sheer ambition of this project implies a master plan conceived by individuals whose understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and earth energies, or geomancy, was so profound it rivals our own modern interdisciplinary science. This celestial connection suggests a purpose far beyond simple worship. It was an attempt to bind the fate of the kingdom to the eternal order of the cosmos, to harness celestial power for the stability of the world. But this grand design of Karnak and the lost science it represents did not simply vanish. Its principles appear to have traveled across the ocean, emerging in another continent with a mysterious and parallel architectural language. Herodotus walked its halls in the 5th century BC, a Greek historian left speechless by a structure that dwarfed even the pyramids. He described a labyrinth near Lake Moeris, a vast complex of 3,000 rooms, 12 roofed courts, and endless winding passages, all built to baffle and astonish. He wrote that it surpassed human achievement, a place where the mere act of moving from court to court required a guide to prevent utter disorientation. For centuries, his account was dismissed as travelers' exaggeration, a fanciful tale from a man prone to tall stories. But what if Herodotus was simply telling the truth? The secret of the Hawara labyrinth is not just that it existed, but that it may still be there, buried intact beneath the Egyptian sand, waiting to be found. Classical geographers like Strabo also reported seeing this monumental complex, a building so immense and intricate it was considered one of the great wonders of the ancient world, located near the Pyramid of Amenemhat III at Hawara. Then it vanished from history, seemingly erased without a trace. The sand swallowed it whole. This leads to the tantalizing possibility that the labyrinth was not destroyed, but intentionally buried or simply submerged by the rising water table and shifting dunes, preserving it like a time capsule. Modern technology has now given us a fleeting glimpse of what lies below. The Mataha expedition, a joint Belgian-Egyptian team, conducted a ground-penetrating radar survey of the area. Their results, announced with cautious excitement, revealed something staggering. The radar detected a massive, grid-like structure made of dense, high-quality stone, lying just 30 to 40 feet beneath the surface. The scans depicted what appears to be a vast, subterranean network of walls and chambers, a ghostly architectural footprint matching the descriptions of the classical authors. The lead researcher stated that the structure is clearly there, a huge artificial anomaly that cannot be explained by natural geology. This is the promise that makes the Hawara labyrinth the potential archaeological discovery of the century. It is not merely another temple. It was described by the ancients themselves as a grand administrative and religious center, a place designed to house all the nomes or provinces of Egypt and their patron gods. What if it also housed their collective knowledge? Imagine a sealed library from a lost age, its 3,000 rooms not empty, but filled with papyrus scrolls, stone tablets, and artifacts from a timeline we have forgotten. This could be the veritable archive of a pre-pharaonic history, the official records of the Zep Tepi, the first time. Within its dark, dry chambers, we might finally find the engineering schematics for the pyramid's construction, the astronomical charts that guided the alignments at Giza, and perhaps even the physical artifacts that explain the schist disk or the purpose of the granite coffer. It could hold the answers to every mystery we have explored, settling the debate over the Sphinx's age and the origin of its builders once and for all. The truth is, we are standing directly above the single greatest potential source of knowledge about our own past. The labyrinth is the ultimate secret, a promised vault containing not gold but information. The only thing separating us from a complete rewriting of human history is the political will and the resources to dig. What profound truths are waiting in the dark just below our feet, silently challenging everything we think we know? The stones have whispered their secrets, but the bones hold a truth written in a language far older than hieroglyphs. Genetic analysis of pre-dynastic Egyptian remains reveals a story of sudden, dramatic change that archaeology alone cannot explain. Around the time of the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, something remarkable happened. A sophisticated culture with complex statecraft, writing, and monumental architecture seems to appear almost fully formed, a sudden leap that defies the slow, gradual model of indigenous development. The secret is that this cultural Big Bang was accompanied by a biological one. The DNA tells us that the population was not a single, isolated group, but a complex tapestry woven from multiple, distinct threads. Geneticists like Dr. S.O.Y. Cater have spent decades unraveling this puzzle. Their work examines the markers hidden deep within our cells, the haplogroups that act as genetic surnames passed down through millennia. These haplogroups are like branches on a massive family tree, tracing ancient migration routes and population mixing. The analysis of early Egyptian remains shows an unexpected and unexplained genetic influx arriving in the Nile Valley at this pivotal moment. It is as if a new branch was suddenly grafted onto the existing tree, bringing with it a set of instructions for a new kind of civilization. The science of archaeogenetics allows us to read this story. By comparing the DNA from different time periods, researchers can detect subtle shifts in the population's genetic makeup. The evidence suggests the founders of dynastic Egypt were a blended people, with significant ancestry from both native North African populations and groups originating in Western Asia. This was not a slow trickle of trade or cultural exchange, but a significant demographic event. Who were these people? The genetic data does not give us names, but it paints a compelling picture. They could have been the survivors of that lost, advanced culture, the very ones who weathered the cataclysms of a younger world. Carrying the fragmented knowledge of their ancestors, they may have arrived in the Nile Valley and found a people ready to listen. They brought with them the principles of astronomy, the secrets of megalithic construction, and the blueprints for a society that could mirror the cosmos. This genetic catalyst would explain the impossible jump from simple agrarian villages to the geometrically perfect, astronomically aligned Giza plateau in what seems like the blink of an eye in historical terms. The mainstream view attributes this unification to the genius of the native Egyptians themselves, a natural evolution of social complexity. Yet the genetic anomalies create a persistent, nagging question. Why does the biological evidence point to a sudden infusion of new people at the exact moment civilization explodes into being? The bones are telling us that the foundation of Egypt was not a solitary invention, but a collaborative rebirth. It was the spark of a forgotten world, igniting the tinder of a new one, setting in motion a golden age whose origins we are only just beginning to decode. While genetic codes whisper of ancient migrations, a paper trail from the dawn of history speaks with a more direct voice. Tucked away in museum cases, protected from the light that would turn them to dust, are the Abu Sir Papyri. These are not grand tales of gods and pharaohs, but something far more revealing: the mundane paperwork of a functioning state. They are administrative records from a 5th dynasty Sun temple, detailing inventories of linen, lists of daily offerings, and the work schedules of priests. On the surface, they seem ordinary, yet buried within their careful script is a secret that challenges everything. These papyri are some of the oldest surviving documents from Egypt, written just centuries after the Great Pyramid was built. And they reveal a system that was already perfect, complete, and bewilderingly complex. The priests of the 5th dynasty were not inventing a new religion or a new way of organizing their world. They were meticulously following a script written by someone else, a template for civilization that was already ancient in their own time. Egyptologists who have painstakingly translated these fragile texts, like Dr. Miroslav Werner, point to a startling consistency. The rituals described, the titles of the officials, the very structure of the temple administration, all appear fully formed. There is no evidence of a developmental phase, no clumsy early attempts at record-keeping. It is as if we walked into a modern corporation and found every procedure, every job description, and every form already in perfect working order. One specific passage details the precise alignment of a temple's axis with a star, a complex astronomical task requiring generations of observational data. Yet the scribe writes of it as a matter of routine, a piece of inherited knowledge to be implemented, not discovered. This written evidence creates a profound contradiction. If the pharaohs of the 4th and 5th dynasties were the brilliant originators of this complex state and religion, why do their own records read like the operating manuals for a machine they inherited but did not fully understand? The Papyri suggest these later pharaohs were not the master architects, but the dedicated caretakers of a legacy. They were curators of a flame that had been lit in a much deeper past, faithfully recording the rituals and knowledge passed down to them, even if the original meaning behind some of the practices had begun to fade. This is the power of a direct written record. The stones of the Osireion suggest an older hand. The geology of the Sphinx points to an older age, but the Abu Sur Papyri state it in plain, bureaucratic language. They provide a faint but undeniable paper trail leading back to the Zep Tepi the first time. They confirm that the civilization we call ancient Egypt was, in its own golden age, already looking back toward a more ancient, more golden age, striving to preserve its fading echo. This written confirmation from the very people who built the later pyramids forces us to ask if they were merely the inheritors, who were the true originators, and what catastrophic event forced them to pass their torch to a new world. These silent, dark halls feel more like a subterranean factory than a tomb. The air in the Serapeum of Saqqara is heavy and still, clinging to a secret far greater than the sacred bulls it was said to contain. Lining the underground galleries are 24 colossal boxes, carved from a single piece of granite or even harder diorite, each one weighing more than 60 tons. Their scale is intimidating, but it is their perfection that truly defies belief. While the official story labels them as sarcophagi for the Apis bulls, the boxes themselves tell a different story, one written not in hieroglyphs but in the language of impossible engineering. Their surfaces are flawlessly flat, polished to a mirror sheen that reflects light like glass. Their corners are perfect 90-degree angles, sharper than any modern cabinet maker could achieve with hand tools. Scattered across their immense lids and sides are a series of bored holes, each one drilled with a precision that suggests a machine tool, not a human hand wielding a copper tube and sand. Engineers who have visited the site, like Christopher Dunn, come away baffled. They measure the surfaces and find tolerances, the allowable deviation from perfection, that are measured in thousandths of an inch. This is a level of flatness and precision we associate with modern optical equipment, like the lenses in telescopes or the beds of high-tech manufacturing machines. It is a standard that ensures no light or fluid can pass between two fitted surfaces. To achieve this on a block of granite weighing as much as a commercial airliner, with the primitive tools we are told were available, is not just difficult. It is physically impossible. The properties of the stone itself are the key to understanding this. Diorite is one of the hardest stones on Earth, significantly harder than the copper that would have been used to work it. A copper chisel, even with a team of workers pounding it with stone hammers, would simply blunter and shatter against the unyielding crystalline structure of the diorite. The chisel would be destroyed long before the stone was shaped, yet these boxes exist. The most compelling theory is that they were not carved by abrasion, but by a process that removed material in a far more sophisticated way. The perfectly straight saw marks visible on some surfaces, the precise circular drill holes that plunge deep into the granite, all point to machinery capable of applying immense, steady pressure. Imagine a saw blade 8 or 9 feet long, perhaps embedded with industrial diamonds, mounted on a massive frame that allowed it to glide through the stone with a consistent, powerful feed rate. This is not the work of artisans with hand tools. It is the work of an industrial process. So what were these boxes originally built for, if not for burial? Their incredible precision hints at a function that required this airtight, resonant perfection. Perhaps they were components in a larger energy-generating or focusing system, their flawless surfaces designed to contain and reflect powerful vibrational forces. The later Egyptians, finding these indestructible marvels, may have simply repurposed them for a function they could understand, as sacred containers for their most revered animals. They became sarcophagi because their true purpose was as lost to the pharaohs as it is to us. The Serapeum boxes are not just artifacts, they are a collection of signed and sealed evidence left in an underground vault for us to find. They are the undeniable proof of a lost industrial capability, a silent stone argument that our past holds a chapter of technological mastery we are only just beginning to read. Every temple in Egypt was designed as a model of the universe at the moment of its birth. At the heart of this cosmic blueprint lies a powerful, recurring symbol, the primordial mound. Egyptian creation myths describe a time before time, an era of swirling, dark waters known as Nun. From this liquid chaos, a single mound of earth emerged, the first solid ground, the Benben. Upon this mound, the god Atum stood and initiated creation, bringing light, order, and life into existence. This was the Zep Tepi, the first time, a golden age when gods walked the earth and established the principles of civilization. For generations, this was treated as a beautiful, symbolic story. But what if it is not merely a myth? What if it is a veiled historical account, a memory of a real place and a real civilization that rose from the literal waters of a global cataclysm? Mythologists like John Anthony West argued passionately that these stories are not primitive fictions, but a sophisticated language. He described them as a history of science in allegorical form, where profound truths about geology, astronomy, and human origins were encoded in symbolic narratives to survive the ages. The great temples are the physical proof of this idea. They were not just built to honor the gods, they were built to replicate that first sacred event. The innermost sanctuary of every major temple, the Holy of Holies, was always the highest point of the structure, reached by a series of gradually ascending floors. This raised platform was the architectural recreation of the primordial mound. The obelisks that pierced the sky, capped with pyramidions that mirrored the Benben stone, were not just monuments. They were echoes of that first emergence from the waters, stone declarations of a new beginning. This symbolism connects directly to the physical anomalies we find. The Sphinx, weathered by water, could be a monument from that actual primordial era, a survivor from the age when the waters of Nun receded. The Cyclopean, water-logged Osireion, with its raw, archaic power, feels like a structure built to withstand chaos itself, a literal anchor from the first time. The mythology speaks of the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, mysterious, semi-divine beings who were said to have ruled Egypt before the first pharaohs. They were described as the civilizing influence, the bringers of knowledge who guided the people in the aftermath of a great cataclysm. This is the ultimate secret encoded in the symbolism. The Egyptians of the dynastic period may not have been the brilliant originators of their own civilization. They were the dedicated inheritors, the faithful children of a lost world. They built their temples as exact replicas of the primordial mound, not just to commemorate a spiritual idea, but to physically reconnect with the source of that forgotten knowledge, to tap into the power and wisdom of the Zep Tepi. Their entire civilization was an attempt to rebuild a golden age whose architects had long since vanished. leaving behind only echoes in stone and a story of a mound rising from the flood. Walk into the so-called oracle chamber within the Great Pyramid, and the first thing you notice is the silence. But it is a strange, heavy silence, one that seems to hum with a pressure you can feel in your bones. Speak a single word and it does not simply fade. It hangs in the air, resonating, amplifying, transforming into something more than speech. This is not an architectural accident. It is the 14th secret, a hidden technology of sound woven into the very stone. Across Egypt, from the subterranean crypts at Karnak to the inner sanctums of lesser-known temples, visitors and researchers report uncanny acoustic phenomena. Whispers become booming commands, and chants seem to gain a physical weight, vibrating through the floor and into the body of the listener. The secret is that these chambers are not just rooms, they are finely tuned instruments. Acoustic engineers who have taken sophisticated equipment into these spaces have made a remarkable discovery. They found that specific chambers are designed to amplify a very narrow band of low frequencies, typically between 95 and 120 Hz. This is not a random range. This is the resonant frequency of the human skull. When sound waves at this frequency fill a confined space, they create standing waves, patterns of energy that remain stationary, pulsating through the air and the stone. The effect on a human being inside this sonic field is profound. Neuroscientists studying these effects have found that exposure to these specific vibrations can shift brainwave patterns. The normal, busy state of beta waves associated with active concentration can give way to the slower, more rhythmic patterns of alpha or even theta waves. These are the brain states linked to deep meditation, heightened suggestibility, creative insight, and trance. The temples, therefore, were not silent halls for quiet prayer. They were dynamic, interactive environments where sound was a deliberate tool for altering consciousness. This leads us into the fascinating science of cymatics and vibroacoustics. Cymatics is the study of how sound vibrations organize matter. If you sprinkle sand on a metal plate and play a specific frequency, the sand will arrange itself into intricate, geometric patterns. The sound is giving an invisible order to the visible world. Vibroacoustics explores how those same vibrations travel through the human body, affecting everything from heart rate and breathing to emotional states and mental clarity. The ancient architects seemed to understand this intimate connection between sound, matter, and mind. They were not just building with stone, they were composing with vibration. They designed spaces where a priest's chant or the strike of a ritual instrument would generate a specific frequency, a sonic key that could unlock altered states of awareness in the initiate's present. This was likely a core component of their mysteries, used for healing, for spiritual initiation, or perhaps for a form of communication that transcended ordinary language. The implication is staggering. This is not primitive ritual, it is applied neuroacoustic science. The builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of the physics of consciousness, using the architecture itself as a resonant interface to influence the human brain and spirit. They knew that to change a person's state of being, you sometimes needed to change the very air they breathed. The precise orientation of the Giza plateau has always been a source of wonder, but what if its perfect alignments are perfect no longer? The Sphinx gazes almost directly east, and the pyramids are skewed just a fraction from true north. These tiny discrepancies might be the most important clues of all, pointing to a time when the world itself was different. This leads us to a secret written not just in stone, but in the very axis of the planet. The work of researchers like Charles Hapgood introduces a radical geological theory, crustal displacement. This idea suggests that the entire outer shell of the Earth can shift catastrophically, sliding over the molten core like the loose skin of an orange. When this happens, the geographic location of the North and South poles changes dramatically, while the planet's tilt in space remains the same. The implications for ancient history are staggering. If such a shift occurred, the cardinal directions would have moved. A temple built to face the North Pole in one epoch would be hopelessly misaligned in the next. The evidence for this lies in the very monuments we have been examining. The Great Pyramid is offset from true north by an almost imperceptible 4 minutes of arc, a minuscule error for builders capable of such staggering precision. But what if it is not an error at all? What if, when the pyramid was first constructed, its sides faced the geographic North Pole perfectly, and the pole itself has since moved? Hapgood's theory, which was seriously considered by none other than Albert Einstein, provides a potential mechanism for a global catastrophe that could erase a civilization. A sudden crustal displacement would trigger unimaginable earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tidal waves that would scour the planet. It is the kind of event that could sink a continent, raise a mountain range, and reset the clock on human history. The survivors of such a cataclysm, the inheritors of a lost world's knowledge, would have sought stable ground to rebuild. They would have chosen a location geologically resilient enough to withstand future upheavals, and they would have built monuments aligned not to the new, shifted pole, but to the old one, preserving a cosmic order they remembered. This theory connects the fate of Egypt to the fate of the entire planet, offering a scientific explanation for the disappearance of a precursor civilization, and the reason its most durable creations, like the Sphinx and the pyramids, feel so out of place in our timeline. They are not misaligned relics of a primitive culture, they are perfectly aligned relics of a different world. This global perspective forces us to ask where else on Earth we might find the fingerprints of this forgotten map, and what other ancient sites might be pointing not to our present, but to a past that has literally shifted beneath our feet. A weathered slab of limestone known as the Inventory Stela sits quietly in the Cairo Museum, its inscription a direct challenge to history. Discovered at Giza in the 19th century, it purports to be a record from the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, the very king credited with building the Great Pyramid. But the text tells a startlingly different story. It describes Khufu not as a builder, but as a restorer, ordering the construction of a new temple beside the Great Sphinx after discovering that the temple of Isis, Lady of the Pyramid, already existed there. The stela explicitly states that the Sphinx itself was already standing, a monument from a time before his own. This single artifact turns the official narrative on its head, suggesting that the most iconic symbols of ancient Egypt were already ancient mysteries to the Egyptians themselves. How do mainstream scholars reconcile this contradiction? Most Egyptologists dismiss the stela as a pious fraud, a later creation from the 26th dynasty, crafted over 1,000 years after Khufu's time to enhance the prestige of the priesthood of Isis. They argue the language and style are anachronistic, a forgery designed to connect a later cult to the glory of the Pyramid Age. Yet other researchers, like the geologist Robert Schoch, point to the stela's content as a potential preservation of a genuine oral tradition, a written echo of a truth that was still remembered. Why would a forger invent such a specific and counterintuitive claim, one that stripped the great Khufu of his most famous achievements? The physical evidence on the Sphinx itself lends startling credibility to the stela's story. The statue's body shows clear, massive patches of restoration masonry, repairs that are themselves incredibly ancient. These are not modern fixes, but stonework that dates back to the Old Kingdom, a time when, according to the conventional timeline, the Sphinx was brand new. Why would a newly carved monument require such extensive structural rebuilding almost immediately? It would be like building a modern skyscraper and then needing to completely rebuild one of its walls just a few years later. The most logical explanation is that the Sphinx was already profoundly old and weathered by Khufu's era, requiring the pharaoh's engineers to perform major restoration just to stabilize the crumbling guardian. This combination of a controversial text and tangible, physical repair work forms a powerful argument. It paints a picture of the 4th dynasty pharaohs not as the original architects of the Giza plateau, but as its inheritors. They were drawn to a site that was already steeped in immense antiquity and sacred power, a place where they built their own monuments alongside the enigmatic relics of a forgotten world, faithfully restoring what they could not fully comprehend. The true language of the Egyptians was not written for the common man to read. For generations, we have translated their hieroglyphs as a straightforward record of pharaohs and harvests, wars and worship. But to an initiated few, these carved symbols were something far greater, a multidimensional code designed to preserve the deepest laws of the universe. This is the secret of their symbolic language, a system of thought where a single image could convey a truth about anatomy, a principle of physics, and a stage of spiritual evolution all at once. The scholar R. A. Schwaller de Lubeck spent 15 years of his life at the Temple of Luxor, not just reading its walls but absorbing them. He came to a startling conclusion. The entire temple was a book in stone, a deliberate and precise model of a human being. Every column, every corridor, every courtyard was proportioned to correspond with the exact dimensions and ratios of the human body, from the navel to the crown of the head. This was not a vague metaphor. It was a precise anatomical and cosmological blueprint, asserting that humanity is a living mirror of the cosmos, built to the same sacred geometry. He called this deeper layer of meaning the symbolique, a mode of thought where a symbol does not merely represent an idea, it embodies it and connects it to every level of reality. Take the Ankh, the famous symbol of life. On the surface, it is a key, but in the symbolique, it represents the fusion of the masculine and feminine principles, the fundamental duality that creates all existence. The loop is the feminine womb, the crossbar is the feminine shoulders, and the vertical shaft is the masculine phallus. Together, they depict the moment of conception, the spark of life itself, and the eternal cycle it generates. Then there is the Djed pillar. We are told it is the backbone of the god Osiris, representing stability, and that is true, but it is only the first layer. The Djed is also the human spinal column, with its segmented vertebrae, the channel through which spiritual energy rises. It is the axis mundi, the world tree that connects the earthly realm to the heavens. It is a symbol of the enduring, stable core around which the chaos of the universe revolves. To read these symbols only as literal objects is to read a complex philosophical treatise as a child's picture book. This sophisticated system implies the work of master thinkers, individuals who perceived the unified laws weaving together spirit and matter, the microcosm of the body and the macrocosm of the galaxy. The language itself is the artifact of a lost source, a civilization so advanced in its understanding that it chose to encode its knowledge not in fragile machines, but in the indestructible grammar of symbol and proportion, ensuring that even if their names were forgotten, their wisdom would endure in plain sight for those with the eyes to see. The ground beneath the pyramids is not the solid foundation we imagine it to be. Modern ears are now listening to the whispers rising from the deep, using technologies that allow us to see through stone without ever lifting a trowel. Ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography have mapped the subterranean world of the Giza plateau, revealing a stunning secret hidden below. The scans show a labyrinthine network of unnatural voids, deep cavities, and tantalizing anomalies that stretch far beneath the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid. The International Scan Pyramids project, alongside Egyptian authorities, made global headlines when their muon tomography detectors confirmed the existence of a massive void, a chamber as large as a grand gallery, located directly above the pyramid's grand gallery. This was not a known corridor or a builder's relieving chamber. It was a new, empty space, a deliberate architectural feature that had been sealed and forgotten for millennia. Even more compelling are the resistivity surveys around the Sphinx, which indicate large, subsurface cavities directly beneath its pores and extending deep into the bedrock. Some researchers analyzing the data have even pointed to the possibility of a hidden water table or an ancient, man-made channel running below the plateau. These are not random geological formations. Their placement is too precise, their shapes too angular to be the simple work of nature. The evidence suggests the entire Giza complex was conceived not just as a collection of surface monuments, but as a single, integrated structure with a deep and purposeful subterranean level. So what was the function of this hidden world? These chambers could have been the ultimate sacred spaces, used for the most profound initiation rituals of the mystery schools, where a candidate would literally descend into the earth to be reborn. They could be sealed libraries protecting the fragile papyrus scrolls that hold the true history and technical knowledge of the builders from the ravages of time and climate. Or, perhaps most intriguingly, they could be integral components of a grand hydraulic machine. If underground rivers or pressurized aquifers were deliberately channeled beneath the plateau, the vibration and flow of that water could have interacted with the pyramid's resonant chambers above, creating a feedback loop of piezoelectric energy. The entire Giza plateau would then function not as a silent necropolis, but as a living, humming power plant rooted deep in the Earth's own dynamics. The greatest discoveries in Egyptology may no longer require digging in the hot sun. They are waiting in the cool, dark silence below, ready to be revealed by the next pulse of radar or the next cosmic ray, promising to rewrite our story from the ground up. The same fingerprints of a lost world appear on continents separated by vast oceans. In Lebanon, the foundation platform of Baalbek holds the 3 largest cut stones on the planet, each weighing over 800 tons. These megaliths are fitted together with a precision that mirrors the Cyclopean blocks of the Osireion in Egypt, a style that speaks the same architectural language. On the other side of the world, at Puma Punku in Bolivia, the stonework reaches an even more baffling level. Here, andesite blocks are interlocked with complex geometric cuts, H-shaped clasps, and surfaces so flat and smooth they seem machined. The stones are not merely stacked, they are engineered with an almost modular precision, a technique that feels eerily familiar to anyone who has studied the granite boxes in the Serapeum. Then there is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a site that completely shattered our timeline. This complex of carved, T-shaped pillars was deliberately buried in sand around 9600 BC, a date thousands of years before the rise of dynastic Egypt. Its builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of stone carving and, like the Egyptians, aligned their structures with celestial bodies. The shared characteristics are undeniable: Cyclopean stonework, polygonal fitting that requires no mortar, precise astronomical alignments, and a mysterious abandonment or burial around the same pivotal epoch. How could cultures with no known contact develop such strikingly similar and advanced construction methods independently? Authors like Graham Hancock propose a radical answer: a lost, global maritime civilization. This network of seafaring people, which he calls the Mother Culture, may have navigated the world's oceans at the end of the last ice age. they would have carried a shared blueprint for civilization, a knowledge of megalithic construction, astronomy, and geomancy, which they imparted to emerging hunter-gatherer societies. This theory of cultural diffusion is written not just in stone but in myth. The most powerful shared story is the Great Flood. From the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the story of Manu in India, from the Deucalion myth in Greece to the countless deluge legends of the Americas, the narrative is the same, a world-destroying cataclysm sent by the gods, with a warning given to a select few who survived to repopulate the earth. The Egyptian Zep-Tepi, the first time emerging from the waters of Nun, is simply their version of this global memory. This secret recontextualizes everything we have explored. The temples of Egypt were not an isolated miracle of human genius. They were a major node in a planetary network, a single chapter in a global epic written by master builders who understood the Earth as a single, interconnected system. The evidence suggests our ancestors were not primitive tribes staring at their own campfires, but the inheritors of a grand, shared legacy from a world we have only just begun to remember. Our most trusted scientific clock might be ticking to the wrong time. Radiocarbon dating, the method used to determine the age of ancient organic materials, has produced baffling results at the very heart of Old Kingdom Egypt. Charcoal samples from the Giza plateau, recovered from the so-called workmen's camps, have sometimes yielded dates centuries older than the reign of the pharaohs who supposedly built the monuments. This is not a simple error in measurement, but a fundamental secret tied to the Egyptian mindset, a culture that revered the past so deeply they built their present with its physical remains. The core of this mystery is known as the old wood problem. Imagine cutting down a massive cedar tree for a ceremonial boat. That tree might have been 500 years old when it was felled. Centuries later, a pharaoh's architect seeking sacred and durable timber retrieves a plank from that same boat and uses it in the roof of a pyramid temple. If we later find a charcoal fragment from that plank in a campfire, the carbon date will reflect the year the tree died, not the year the pyramid was built. The science itself is sound, but its application to a civilization that reused ancient, sacred materials creates a profound chronological hall of mirrors. Radiocarbon dating measures the steady decay of carbon-14, a radioactive isotope in once living matter. When an organism dies, it stops absorbing carbon-14, and the isotope begins to decay at a known rate. By measuring how much remains, scientists can calculate the time of death. This works perfectly for a single-use item, like a grain of wheat consumed in a single season. But in Egypt, wood was a precious commodity, often salvaged from structures that were already ancient. A specific case involved samples linked to the Great Pyramid, where carbon dates from organic inclusions in the mortar scattered across a range of several hundred years, some significantly predating the conventional construction date of around 2500 BCE. These discrepancies do not mean the pyramids are necessarily that much older, but they reveal a critical weakness in our dating framework. We are trying to pin a precise historical moment to an object that may have already been an antique when it was used. The Egyptians were not just building with stone, they were building with time itself, weaving the sacred antiquity of older materials into their new monuments. This secret forces us to confront the fragility of our entire chronological edifice. If the primary scientific tool we rely on can be so easily skewed by cultural practice, then the door is left wide open. The true age of Egypt's core monuments, stripped of this confusing carbon evidence, may be far more ancient than any textbook has ever dared to print. For centuries, whispers of a hidden library have clung to the sands of Giza, a legend far older than modern archaeology. Esoteric traditions and secret societies have long spoken of a hall of records, a vast repository said to contain the entire knowledge of a lost civilization, perhaps even Atlantis itself, sealed in a chamber beneath the Sphinx. This prophecy found its most famous voice in the 20th century through the American psychic Edgar Cayce, who, while in a trance state, declared that a hidden hall lay between the Sphinx and the Nile, its entrance concealed near the statue's right shoulder. He predicted this vault would be opened before the century's end, revealing scrolls, crystal artifacts, and technological secrets that would revolutionize our world. This was not just a fringe idea, it was a specific, timed prediction that ignited a firestorm of interest and, eventually, real-world exploration. The secret here is not just the legend itself, but the tangible, physical evidence that has emerged in its pursuit. In the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar surveys commissioned by researchers did indeed detect anomalous voids and chambers beneath the Sphinx's pores, exactly where the legends pointed. This led to formal drilling operations sanctioned by the Egyptian authorities, which uncovered evidence of man-made tunnels and what appeared to be a small, sealed cavity. Believers saw this as the first physical proof of the prophecy, the literal threshold of the Hall of Records. Skeptical archaeologists, however, offer a more mundane explanation. They argue these cavities are natural features in the limestone bedrock, fissures or pockets commonly found in such geology, and that the drilling merely struck an underground water table or a small, insignificant cavity. They dismiss the entire concept as a romantic fantasy, a projection of our own desires onto a mysterious but ultimately understandable past. Yet the power of the Hall of Records legend endures because it speaks to a profound human hope. It is the hope that our past is not a fragmented puzzle with half the pieces missing, but a complete story waiting to be read. It represents the possibility that a golden age of humanity did not vanish without a trace, but had the foresight to bury a time capsule for its heirs, a complete record of its science, its history, and its spiritual understanding. Whether this chamber is a physical reality or a powerful metaphor for lost knowledge, its symbolic weight is undeniable. It is the ultimate secret, the promise that beneath the sands lies not just another artifact, but a key that could unlock the deepest mysteries of human consciousness and our collective destiny. The true scale of their genius is not measured in cubits, but in the invisible constants of mathematics. Take the Great Pyramid's original dimensions before its outer casing stones were stripped away. The ratio of its perimeter to its original height is not a random number, it is approximately 2 pi. This means if you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 2 pi, you get a figure almost exactly equal to the perimeter of its square base. This is a direct and stunning geometric relationship, embedding one of the most fundamental constants of our universe directly into the structure's proportions. Engineers who have modeled the pyramid, like John Taylor in the 19th century, were among the first to publicly note this precise correlation, a finding that seems to stretch beyond coincidence. The mathematical fingerprints do not stop there. The golden ratio phi, approximately 1.618, appears repeatedly within the pyramid's internal and external geometry. This irrational number, celebrated for its role in aesthetics and nature from the spiral of a galaxy to the proportions of the human body, is woven into the very fabric of the king's chamber and the angles of the pyramid's passages. What does this mean in practical terms? It means the builders were not merely stacking stones according to a rough sketch. They were executing a design of breathtaking mathematical sophistication, a blueprint that required a deep understanding of geometry and irrational numbers. Mainstream history credits the Greeks with formalizing these concepts thousands of years later, with figures like Pythagoras and Euclid. Yet here, in the heart of the Bronze Age, stands a monument that applies these principles on a colossal scale. This cannot be a fluke. The consistency and complexity of these relationships point to a deliberate encoding of knowledge. The pyramid was far more than a tomb or a temple. It was a mathematical and geodetic monument, a permanent repository of fundamental constants that defined the builder's understanding of the world. They were not just building a structure, they were crystallizing their knowledge of the cosmos into a form that would endure for millennia, a silent testament to an understanding we are only now relearning. The Sahara Desert was not always a sea of sand. Just 10,000 years ago, its dunes were carpeted in grasslands, dotted with shimmering lakes where elephants and giraffes came to drink. This was the African humid period, a lost world of incredible fertility that lasted for millennia. Paleoclimatologists pieced together this picture from ancient rock art found in places like the Tassili Ennaja Plateau in Algeria. These breathtaking cave paintings depict a vibrant savanna showing herds of cattle, hunters pursuing water buffalo, and communities thriving in a landscape that is now utterly desolate. Fossilized pollen and the bones of aquatic creatures buried deep in the sand confirm what the art suggests. A green Sahara was a real, flourishing ecosystem. This environmental secret provides the most plausible stage for the emergence of a sophisticated precursor culture. Imagine a civilization developing over thousands of years in this vast, hospitable land, with ample water, game, and space to evolve. They would have had the stability and resources to develop complex social structures, astronomy, and advanced building techniques. Then the climate began to shift. Around 6,000 years ago, the Earth's orbital cycle changed, causing the monsoon rains to retreat south. The lakes evaporated, the rivers dried up, and the grasslands slowly gave way to the encroaching desert. What happens to a complex society when its entire world turns to dust? It moves. The Great Migration began, a desperate exodus to the last remaining reliable source of water in the region, the Nile River. This theory elegantly connects the Green Sahara to the sudden explosion of civilization in the Nile Valley. The newcomers were not primitive nomads. They were the refugees of a lost golden age, carrying the accumulated knowledge of their people, the very knowledge required to build a new society from the ground up. They arrived with their understanding of geometry, their mastery of stone, and their celestial mythology. To the simpler, indigenous people of the Nile, these survivors with their advanced skills and profound wisdom would have seemed like something more than human. They would have been seen as gods, the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, who the Egyptian records say ruled in the dawn of time before the first pharaohs. The desolate Sahara, then, is not just a barrier, it is a buried cradle. The origins of Egypt's grandeur may not lie in the valley itself, but out in the silent, sandy wastes, holding the fossilized secrets of the true first time. History remembers Memphis and Thebes, but the first capital of a unified Egypt has vanished completely. Thinis, the legendary city from which the first pharaohs of the first and second dynasties ruled, is known only from ancient texts. It was the sacred burial ground for kings like Narmer and Menes, the unifiers of the two lands. Yet, despite generations of searching, not a single stone of Thinis has been conclusively identified. Its location remains one of Egyptology's most profound and embarrassing secrets. How can an entire capital city, the very heart of the world's first nation-state, simply disappear without a trace? The search has centered on the general area of Abydos, a site of immense antiquity, but the city itself eludes discovery. This failure suggests something far more significant than a simple case of misplaced ruins. The secret of Thinis is that it may not be a standard archaeological site at all. What if Thinis was not a city in the conventional sense, but a sprawling, sacred complex built in a style so archaic, so tied to the land itself, that its remains are almost invisible to modern eyes, mistaken for natural formations or later, simpler constructions. This theory connects Thinis to other desert legends, like the fabled Zerzura, the oasis of the small birds. Medieval Arab chroniclers spoke of a white-walled city hidden somewhere in the vastness of the western desert, a place of great treasure guarded by silent giants. The descriptions of Zerzura, a lost city waiting to be found by a brave traveler, echo the mystery of Thinis. Could these be different names for the same forgotten reality? A primordial capital from the pre-dynastic era that served as the original template for Egyptian civilization. The ongoing search for Thinis, therefore, is not just about finding old walls. It is a quest for the root of pharaonic power. If Thinis can be found, its deepest layers might not contain the tombs of the first dynastic kings, but the ruins of their predecessors. It could be the physical location of the Zep Tepi, the place where the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, established their first sacred center. The answers to the mysteries of the Sphinx's age, the purpose of the pyramids, and the source of that sudden, inexplicable knowledge may not lie beneath the known temples, but under the uncharted sands where the first kings of Egypt chose to build their eternal home. The search for a lost city is ultimately a search for a lost world, a civilization whose capital has been silently waiting, not to be rediscovered but to be remembered. Beyond the polished display cases and the well-trodden tourist paths of the Cairo Museum lies another world entirely. In the silent, dusty basements, tucked away in forgotten storage rooms, rest thousands of artifacts that have never seen the light of modern scrutiny. This is the secret hoard, a treasure trove of potential evidence that could shatter our historical timeline, if only someone would look. The sheer volume of material excavated during the colonial and early archaeological era is almost impossible to comprehend. Expeditions in a rush for grand museum pieces often boxed up countless smaller finds with little more than a location scrawled on the crate. Today, these objects sit in a state of organized chaos, an embarrassment of riches that overwhelms the limited staff and resources of the institution. One archaeologist described it as trying to drink from a fire hose of history, with new discoveries in the field constantly adding to the immense backlog. The real secret is not a lack of artifacts, but a lack of attention. The most revolutionary object in human history could be sitting on a shelf just a few feet away, covered in dust and mislabeled. Imagine another schist disk, even more complex, stored beside a crate of common pottery shards. Consider the possibility of papyrus scrolls, their text still untranslated, detailing construction techniques or astronomical observations from a time before the pharaohs. Or perhaps a box of metal tools, their composition and wear patterns analyzed with modern spectroscopy, revealing a metallurgical science that should not exist. These basements are not a graveyard for broken relics. They are a library of unread books, each artifact a potential sentence or chapter in a story we have not yet deciphered. The key to rewriting our past is not always buried in the sand. Sometimes it is waiting in the dark, patiently hoping for a curious mind to shine a light and finally ask the right question. Each piece of this ancient puzzle, from the water-worn Sphinx to the star-aligned pyramids, now locks into place. The geological evidence pushes the origins of Giza back thousands of years before the pharaohs. The brutal, archaic masonry of the Osireion stands as a testament to a different, older school of builders. The precise mathematics encoded in the Great Pyramid's proportions reveal a knowledge of constants like pi and phi. The genetic influx at the dawn of dynastic Egypt points to a new people arriving with a ready-made blueprint for civilization, and the global echoes from Baalbek to Göbekli Tepe suggest this was not an isolated event, but a fragmented memory of a worldwide culture. When you view these threads not in isolation but as a whole, a new and startling picture of human history emerges. It tells of a sophisticated civilization that thrived during the last ice age, a golden age of humanity perhaps 12,000 years ago. This precursor culture possessed a profound understanding of the cosmos, the Earth's energies, and advanced engineering principles that allowed them to shape mountains into monuments. Then catastrophe struck. Scientific evidence is mounting for the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a series of comet fragments that slammed into the Earth's ice sheets. This event would have triggered firestorms, global flooding, and a dramatic climate shift that plunged the world into a deep freeze. The Green Sahara turned to dust, coastlines were redrawn, and this advanced society was shattered. Its great cities and most of its people lost beneath the waves or the desert sands. But not everyone perished. Scattered bands of survivors, the inheritors of this lost world's knowledge, traveled the globe seeking refuge. One such group, the legendary Shemsu Hor or followers of Horus, found their way to the stable, life-giving banks of the Nile River. To the indigenous people there, these survivors with their incredible wisdom and skills would have seemed like gods. They did not slowly invent civilization, they imposed it. They became the divine founders, the templates for the pharaohs who would come later. Their first act was to build, using the last of their inherited science, the indestructible core monuments, the Sphinx, the Osireion, and the original Giza complex, aligning them with the stars as a permanent memorial to their own lost epoch. They encoded their entire understanding of physics, astronomy, and spiritual science into the geometry of the stones, creating a library that could survive any flood or fire. Over the millennia, as memory faded into myth and the true purpose of these machines was forgotten, their descendants, the dynastic Egyptians, became the curators of this legacy. They built their own magnificent temples around these archaic cores, faithfully copying the symbols and rituals without fully grasping the profound science behind them. The pyramids were not the beginning of Egyptian civilization, but the magnificent end of a much older one. This synthesized timeline is the ultimate secret, a story not of a slow, linear ascent from primitivism, but of a brilliant flame that was nearly extinguished, only to be rekindled from its last embers. It suggests that our own modern age may not be the first peak of human achievement, but a second climb, one where we are only now beginning to remember the heights from which we once fell. We have journeyed together through the sands of time, past the orthodox boundaries of history, to uncover a world of secrets whispering from beneath Egypt's ancient temples. From the water-worn Sphinx to the precision-engineered boxes of the Serapeum, from the celestial alignments of Giza to the potential of a lost hall of records, the evidence points toward a profound truth. Our civilization's timeline is not a simple, linear progression. It is a story with missing chapters, perhaps even a different beginning altogether. The collective weight of these mysteries challenges us to think bigger, to question the established narrative, and to embrace the possibility that human history is far older and more mysterious than we ever imagined. This is not about diminishing the achievements of the dynastic Egyptians, but about recognizing them as the brilliant inheritors and custodians of a legacy from a forgotten age. As the great philosopher Plato once said, through the story of Atlantis, there have been and will be again many destructions of mankind. Let this exploration be a catalyst for your own curiosity. What do you think lies buried beneath the sands of time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more journeys into the unknown, and never stop questioning the story you've been told.